Hey guys, what's up? So in this chapter, we will learn how to work with the artificial lights within Enscape. We will understand how the artificial lights work. We'll get to know the different types of lights like rectangular, spots, linear, and some other kinds. And we will understand in which situations we should choose a specific kind of light. So we are going to test all these artificial lights in this scene, and you can notice that there are many light fixtures here with ceiling lamps and spotlights and many others. So basically we will try to place artificial lights in all the light sources and produce a nice image based basically in artificial lighting. And in this first video, I would like to show you just some basic principles that all the different kinds of light here in Enscape follow. So I will basically place some random lights around this room, and we will understand how we can work with intensity and colors and many other parameters. And as you can notice, this room here has a section cut here. So when you click here, we can see this section. And when we use Enscape and we use the section tool, the light that comes from outside doesn't enter the room. So basically, we won't have a strong ambient light coming from outside, and we will have actually just a little bit of light coming from the window. So whenever we place an artificial light, we will be able to see its effect in a very clear way. Okay, so to start testing out, I will start Enscape. Okay, I'm gonna rearrange here my layout. So I will place this window here because I will need to work around with my SketchUp model. So I guess now it's fine. And as you can notice, when we zoom in our model, it's very dark here inside, and we just have a little bit of light coming from the window. And whenever we need to insert any kind of light, we have to click here in the Enscape Objects button, and here you can see that we have different types of lights, like the sphere, the spot, the line, the rectangle, and the disc. We will of course take a better look at them in further videos, and for now we will basically explore the sphere one. Here you can also see that we can place sound sources by clicking here, and also we can place linked models, but we will talk about these features in another video. So for now, I will basically click here the sphere light, this first button here, and whenever we use the sphere light, we basically need to click twice. The first click will be to start placing the light, so I can click, for example, in the floor, and then I can position this light according to one of those axes here. And maybe for now I can use the blue axis, and I'll click anywhere. And just after placing this light, we can see its effect. So we now have a brighter image, we have the shadows being cast, and we can see that this light is quite white. And as we've seen before, we can control the intensity of this light by dragging this slider to the right, for example, and then we'll have a more powerful light. And if we drag it to the left, we have less intensity, so the scene gets darker. So it's very simple to control the power of the light, basically by dragging this slider here. We can also control the color of the light by applying a material to it. So for example, if we click here in the paint bucket and choose any kind of color, so you can explore the colors category here in the materials tab, and you can choose any color you like. For example, I'll choose green color, and I will click in the light that I've just placed, and now we have a green light. So we can change the color basically by choosing another one and once again clicking in our light. If you would like to choose some kind of color that you cannot find here in this colors category, you can always choose any kind of color and then click here in edit. So now we can choose the color from this color wheel here. We can also choose the darkness here on the right side, so we can customize a little bit better the color of our light. We can also change this picker here to other kinds of system like HLS, where we control the hue, saturation, and lightness. So we can basically choose the hue, which is the color itself. Then we can play around with the saturation, and then we can make it darker. You could also use the RGB, which is a very famous system for defining the colors. And here we can control the red, green, and blue tones. So there are actually many ways of choosing a specific color, but particularly I almost all the time use the colors that already exist here in the SketchUp Materials tab. So if we would like to reset the color to its original tone, which is actually white, we can basically click here, which is none. And then we can click in our light once again, and then we go back to the original effect. And it's also very important to notice that when we talk about lighting here in Enscape, the final effect of the light depends in other parameters rather than just the luminous intensity, such as, for example, the visual setting. So many times we try to reach a specific result here by increasing or decreasing the intensity, but we forget to change the exposure and some other parameters that are very important for the final lighting result. So for example, if I open here my visual settings, and I can even change the style to white, so we can see now in a better way how the artificial lights are going to affect our scene. We can see here that when we change the exposure value, of course, the lights will appear to be stronger because we are actually capturing more light through the camera. So we can make it really bright or really dark. And actually for this exercise now, I will turn off the auto exposure. The auto exposure is actually a very interesting feature that I normally leave it on. And it controls the exposure so that we don't get very bright or very dark images. So it can help us to eliminate really strange results. But since I'm testing the artificial lights, I'm gonna leave it off because then I can really see the real effect of the lights. So they can be very bright or very dark. But in most exercises, I usually leave it on. And here, as you can see, whenever we increase the exposure, we are actually interfering in this intensity. So it's always very important to remember that the final result will be a consequence of this intensity and also the exposure. Here in the visual settings, we have other parameters that are very important as well. So I will decrease a little bit the exposure, and we can also click here so it goes back to the original value. And here in atmosphere, we have a very important parameter called artificial light brightness. And this parameter interferes directly in the intensity of all the artificial lights that are in the scene. So in our case here, if we increase this parameter, our sphere light will become stronger. And if we decrease it, it will become weaker. But if we had other lights placed around our scene, this parameter would change the value of all of them at the same time, and this can be very helpful to make fast changes in the lighting setup of our scene. Okay, so I will click here to reset the value. And also concerning the color of the light, if we explore the image tab and change, for example, the color temperature or some other parameters here, we can make this image colder or we can make it warmer. And of course, we are not actually changing the color of the light, but we are changing a kind of filter that interferes in the tone of the light. So it's also very important to understand how to balance the intensity of the light, the color of the light, and also all the visual settings that we are using. Okay, so I'll close this window here. And another very important aspect of the light is that it behaves as a normal SketchUp model. So for example, we can move it and place it wherever we want. We can rotate it using the move tool and clicking here in this red point, or even using the rotation tool. We can make copies of the slides by pressing the Ctrl key when we are using the move function. So for example, I can copy the slides and I can place them in different parts of our model. I'll make here some copies to see the result. And what's very important to notice is that when we make copies of the lights, we are actually creating instances of them. So if we change the intensity of any of these copies, they are all going to follow up. And I'm going to place these lights a little bit more close to the ground so we can see the effect. Okay, so you can see that they all have the same intensity now, and if I choose any of them and change this intensity, they are going to behave in the same way at the same time. But however, this doesn't apply for colors. So if I use the paint bucket and choose a color here and apply this color to any of these lights, you can see that it's just affecting one light. So we can have different color in these instances, and if we choose any of them and change the intensity, they still have the same relation, but they have different colors. And if we would like to use the same color, we can basically select them all, and then we choose a specific color and apply to all of them at the same time. And another important behavior of the lights that we need to be aware is that we can hide them, and this means that they are not going to work. So for example, if I select this light and right click and choose hide, you can see that now this specific light is not working. And then if I click here and edit unhide all, it now works again. And this means that we can organize our files in specific ways that we can turn on and off groups of lights. For example, if we create a tag for the lights, so we can go here in tags and we can create a tag called lights to make a test, and we apply this tag to these three lights. So we can select them, and here in entity info we can choose the tag lights. Now we can turn on and off these three lights at the same time, basically by hiding the lights tag here or unhiding it, and then they are back to our scene again. So this can be very useful to organize our files, and we can quickly turn on and off specific groups of lights. And to finish this first video, it's always important to remember that it's not so easy to achieve interesting lights results. We have to test a lot of different kinds of lights and intensities and colors till we find a nice effect. And it's always important to look at references and to try to understand the behavior of artificial lighting. And one important tip is to try to use a lot of different light sources. Many times we try to light up our scene using just one light source or two, and that can give us a very bad result. But if we place different lights and try to reach a nice balance between them, probably our final result will be much better and will make our 3D models much more interesting.